What's up, guys? It's Eric Kelly, aka the Tech Gentleman, bringing you guys another video. Today I want to take a unique look at the iPhone 15 Pro, specifically comparing the hype of Apple's keynote and marketing to the real world, and what I like to call hype versus reality. As a longtime YouTuber and Android user, I think you'll find what I have to say pretty interesting. So stick around, and without further ado, let's talk tech. Alright guys, so out the gate I want to set expectations and make one thing clear. This will not be just an outright Apple bashing video. And I feel like anybody who just bashes Apple doesn't live in reality, right? There's no way you can say that this phone is not good at a myriad of things and it's not the best in some areas, but it just might not be for you. And that's more my perspective. As an Android user, I've always watched all the Apple keynotes, always been aware of all the latest features and everything that Apple has coming to the table. But I've also been on the outside looking in. So usually my perception of Apple and their products is somebody who's kind of outside of the club in a sense. This time going around, I got the iPhone 15 Pro, and it was very interesting what I found just talking to people and kind of discussing some of my woes as far as using an iPhone goes. But in this video, I want to specifically focus on what Apple tells you or what Apple wants you to be excited about versus what they actually deliver in the product, and does it make a difference? So hype versus reality. All right, so first up, how can you miss it? This is the all new color for this year. This is the titanium version of the new iPhone 15 Pro, and this is also surrounded by titanium. So to me, it was very interesting when Apple chose this kind of marketing direction. It's called the titanium iPhone. Right, that is like their flagship main marketing pitch for this iPhone. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really make a difference at all, right? If you're not coming from specifically a previous Pro device, you will never even notice the difference, right? Titanium will mean nothing to you. Even if you're coming from a previous Pro device, I feel like out the gate, you'll notice and appreciate that this phone is lighter than the previous Pros. But compared to other phones its size, it's not really a light phone, right? So it's kind of almost a moot point. I think it's just really, I'm going to say the titanium is mostly hype. There's nothing really added feature-wise, functionality-wise. There's nothing you can do with a titanium iPhone that you can't do with the previous iPhone, all right? And to be honest, I'm actually missing the stainless steel. I like the weight. There's sort of a association with premiumness, I think, that comes with things that are a little bit heavier and a little bit heftier. So as far as titanium goes, that one goes definitely in the hype bucket for me. It's just something else for Apple to do. I think also they mentioned having smaller bezels, which once again, once you get the device, you will never notice, all right? It doesn't impact your usage. There's nothing you can do with smaller bezels that you couldn't with the previous device. Definitely in the hype bucket. Ceramic shield though. I'll say this, jerry-rig everything. He did do his normal scratch test where he uses his Mose picks and he does the, scratches at level 6 with deeper grooves at level 7. And what he found was the ceramic shield actually did not scratch as deeply at a level 6. It still scratched, but the scratches just weren't as deep at a level 6, which I think is basically just validates what they're saying. They are using some different type of glass than everybody else is using, but at the end of the day, glass is glass, right? Glass is going to crack. If you drop it on the pavement, it's probably going to chip, mar, do whatever. At the end of the day, to me, that's hype. That's just marketing for the most part. The next thing they touted at the keynote was 100% recycled aluminum, which has zero bearing, and to me, it's not even a customer-facing thing to mention. All right, it's just something else that Apple can kind of put their energy into, and kind of for a business stakeholder kind of thing, makes them seem like a better company than maybe they really are. Not saying they're a bad company, I have my personal opinions, but to me that's just a weird thing to put so much time and effort and energy into at this point. To me, that's another hype thing, right? If I'm buying the iPhone, how the iPhone was made, but the materials that they're using on the inside, it doesn't make the phone cheaper. It doesn't make the phone, more economical. It doesn't make it tougher. There are no benefits from a customer-facing perspective from them using 100% aluminum. if that's something that you care about, maybe one day your kids will benefit from it, but it's a phone. It's not saving the world. It's not the purpose of it. It's going in the hype bucket for me. Now, something that is definitely not hype is the action button. So if you're not familiar, the new iPhone 15s have the action button instead of the switch. And normally out the gate, I like the way that they implemented it, because by default, a press and hold will do the same thing the previous switch did. So if you're somebody and you're not up to date on the latest and greatest, you're just somebody who's due for an upgrade, you can get the button and it still functions the way you expect it to function. But if you're someone who pays attention to all the keynotes and all the latest features, then you're excited for the action button. And for me, I actually have my action button set up to open the shortcuts menu, and I've got some things that I like to use, which are the mute toggle, open the camera, and Google Assistant, which I know is kind of blasphemy, but I love it. So to me, the functionality there, that's just a small taste of what you can do with the Shortcuts app. I really appreciate Apple's, kind of coming into the fold with that. You've been able to do that a lot on Android devices for a while, using the power button. If they don't have a whole second dedicated button already, I just like that Apple is kind of coming up to speed with offering people different ways to interact with their device. I appreciate it. The action button, definitely not hype. Something else that's not hype, the Type-C port. Finally, thank you EU for putting the clamps down on Apple. They had to come into the 2010s and start putting USB-C on their on their devices. So the benefits, I don't know where to start. For one, you get to use USB-C cable, and using a USB-C cable just allows you to take one cable and plug into everything. And it would be different if Apple's other devices didn't use USB-C already, but they do. They've done it for years. So it's just been weird and frankly a money grab for them to keep the Lightning port on the iPhone, force you to have a different cable, use different accessories, and also lock out every other manufacturer from taking advantage of some of the things you might buy for an iPhone that now, because you're using Type-C, you can use on other devices. Something else the Type-C port allows is higher speed transport. So now you can actually record ProRes 4K 60, and you can record it directly to an external drive like my Samsung T7 here. For one, you're definitely going to need it, especially on the 15 Pro 128 gig model, which is what I have, because you are not able to record 4K 60 natively internally, because the 4K 60 ProRes video is ridiculously large. I recorded a couple of minutes of it, and it's tracking about 5-6 gigs per minute. So it's really, you have to really want that footage at that quality level and be able to take it into some professional grade software and really do your thing with it. But just having that flexibility, once again, I love it. Also, I think immediately we'll see accessories that are compatible with other devices, not just an iPhone. MagSafe has already kind of gotten out. A lot of other Android manufacturers are being able to take advantage of it through cases. You can use little MagSafe rings and put on your device if it doesn't have it natively, if you don't want to use a case. And this is going to be another thing that opens up Apple's accessory ecosystem to the rest of just the phone market, which I think is great overall. So there are going to be fewer barriers. If you have an iPhone and you're using some Type-C accessories and you want to switch or try out something else, that just makes it easier, unless they lock it out due to something like them having specifically an app that is only available on the iPhone, or they lock it out to just an iPhone only functionality somehow. But I think overall the flexibility of the accessories is going to go up. That's going to be awesome. All right. Something else that's awesome is the standby mode. So if you're not familiar, standby, if you charge your phone horizontally, it'll automatically kick up like a little, I call it like a smart display type screen, where it gives you like the time, the date, and you can kind of choose how it's laid out. You get like a snippet of the weather or some photos or things like that. I really feel like Google chose profits over functionality here, because they have a plethora of smart displays, all different shapes and sizes. And instead of adding that functionality to their Android devices, or even specifically the Pixel line, they chose to lock that out. And you can do like a little screensaver, but the functionality isn't there. In my mind, if they were to do something like with the Pixel tablet, where when you dock it or you charge it, it literally turns into a smart display. You can yell, "Hey G" at it. That would just take the functionality over the moon in my mind. But also, why would I buy a smart display at that point, right? especially if you have a tablet and you can do the same functionality. So I kind of get it, but I don't like it, and I appreciate what Apple is doing here. They really have no choice. They don't have smart displays, so this is kind of their way of kind of cutting out some of that Google, smart home territory for themselves. So definitely a win there. So the next thing that they talked about at the Apple keynote, obviously they talked about the processor, the A17 Pro. They're going away from the old monikers of, the Bionic naming. They didn't go the Max and, M2, M1 route. They chose a whole different naming convention and calling it Pro. It's only available in the Pro devices this year, which kind of has me questioning, will it just never come to a standard iPhone, or is it always going to be the Pro in the Pro devices and something else in the other ones? What are they going to call the processors next year that go into the iPhone 16 and 16 Plus? I guess we'll have to wait and see how they handle that. But at the end of the day, the 17 Pro, it's hype, right? I don't think anyone has ever bought an iPhone and they're like, yeah, it has that new Bionic such and such, and that's going to let me do this that I couldn't do with the last one. Unless your phone is years and years old, ultimately they don't make a difference, right? Their processors have been overpowered for smartphone use for a while, so there aren't really many benefits you're going to get last year to this year if you're moving iPhone to iPhone. And if you're coming from outside of there, you're new to the whole game anyway. So A17 Pro, hype. Same with the accelerated ray tracing, hardware accelerated ray tracing. It's hype. For one, it falls into a category of things that are promised and not delivered. So right now, even though you have the capability in the phone, you're relying on game developers to develop games specifically for the iPhone 15 Pro to be able to take advantage of the hardware accelerated ray tracing. They have some in the pipeline, but until they get here, you can't really hang your hat on that feature, right? If that's what you're going to buy this phone for, you will be waiting a lot to see what it kind of matures into, if it's something that people even pay attention to in the future. So hardware accelerated ray tracing, definitely going into hype bucket. And so the last thing that I want to cover are the cameras, right? They got to upgrade for the cameras this year. They have 48 megapixel main sensor. They're also bending down the 48 megapixel shot to a 24 megapixel shot, which is a little bit higher resolution than the normal 12 megapixel bending that most other manufacturers do. Even Samsung, when they had 100 megapixel whatever, they were still bending down to 12 versus 24. So I think you might get a little bit better, clarity in your pictures, possibly because they're doing that. But at the end of the day, the photos really aren't just mind-blowing. The thing that was, though, was the video. I remember the first time I shot some video, and I'm shooting side by side. At the time I had a Pixel 7 Pro, but I picked up a Samsung and shot some video side by side and just panning around, moving. The video is so solid. And it took me a while to figure out exactly what I was seeing that was different. And the best way I can describe it has to be just each frame of the video is so solid and consistent and smooth. There's no, popping or jumping when it comes to focusing or exposure compensation. I don't know if you would call it, frame pacing or what, but as soon as you started shooting video on the iPhone, it didn't look like regular cell phone video at that point. It was just a lot smoother. The video on iPhone is definitely not hype. I'll say that. It's not hype at all. Photos, sure, I think some other manufacturers have some other options that make their cameras a little bit more functional. Right now, the Pixel is kind of knocking out the park with the post-processing stuff, the Magic Eraser and things like that. But if you're going to shoot video and you want the absolute best phone video you can get, the iPhone is the top dog. It's the king, and I have no problem saying that. And that's before you even get into using things like, recording ProRes and stuff like that. I think that's a little bit less practical, but as far as just a regular person, and the majority of people pulling out their phone, recording video, it's going to look good. Once it goes to social media, nobody will be able to tell, but out the gate, you recorded the best video you could record. So that's all you can really ask for at the end of the day. But Yeah, I think overall, the iPhone this year, it's hype-ish, right? It's not all hype. There are definitely some things they did this year that I really appreciate and that made trying them out a lot more feasible. As long as Apple had a Lightning port, I was never going to try it out. I just have too many devices that use a Type-C port. The Apple was just, the Lightning connector was just too restrictive. I wasn't going to invest in that, in that ecosystem. Going to Type-C though, I mean, I didn't even think about it the first time I had to plug my iPhone into another charger, right? I have 65 watt chargers, 45 watt chargers all around the house. And whenever I'd be low, I just reach over, pop the cord in, and it just blended in, right? It's the biggest, I don't know how to describe this. It's the biggest improvement that makes the phone normal, if that makes sense, right? It's the thing that blends in the most. It doesn't stand out. Nobody's gonna be like, oh my gosh, the Type-C port on the iPhone is just amazing. Like, no, it's regular, right? They finally caught up. And I know this is kind of getting ranty, but that really is probably the most impactful thing. And for some people, it's going to be painful, right? If you have a lot of Lightning connectors sitting around your house, Lightning accessories, that's going to be a pain point. But I think for the entire industry, Apple having a Type-C port is going to be probably the most impactful. Just kind of restating that. But yeah, man, the iPhone, I got to be honest, there's one thing that I think is kind of hype, and that's just having an iPhone, right? The majority of people I talk to, as far as why they're on an iPhone, a lot of times it was, I got it because somebody in my family had it, or everybody else in my family has an iPhone, so I got one because everybody's using iMessage, because I got an iPad, because I got a Mac. It was rarely I use an iPhone and this feature is so great, or this thing about it just works so well for me. I had 2 people out of probably 15 that said that there was a specific feature or reason why they chose the iPhone, not all these reasons why they can't leave the iPhone. And I think just that kind of approach to just business is, it's dated, like they've had a lot of success, but I just can't get behind it. I can't support that, right? Even down to iMessage. I think that if iMessage were to become available on other devices, and really, I don't know anybody who wants iMessage like that, right? I think we just want to be able to send our friends with Apple devices photos and videos that don't look like crap. And it's not a capability thing. It's not that other phones just take inferior photos and video. Apple literally destroys anything coming from outside of Apple. That's just what they do. So I think that the closest thing I can relate that to is a finesse, right? If I'm a normal Apple user where I upgrade my phone once every year or 2, I'm not watching keynotes, I'm not looking outside of the Apple fence. I just have my iPhone and I know what happens on my iPhone. And what happens on my iPhone is if you don't have an iPhone and I get a picture from you, it looks like crap. If you have an iPhone and I get a picture, it looks amazing. And that paints a false narrative of other devices. And I think that Apple knows that. That's why that is the singular thing that they refuse to bring into 2023 or 2021 or 2020 even. Like they actively destroy anything else to keep people kind of mentally locked into iPhone, because I think that if you start making other devices look on par with your device, then you're going to have a lot of people leaving, a lot of people trying other things. The Type-C port, in my mind, I never thought I'd see a Type-C port on the iPhone, just being honest, because there was no reason to, right? It was the only, if you were getting an iPhone, the only one you could get had a Lightning port. There's literally no competition at that point. And so now that they have a Type-C port, that opens up a lot of other options as far as accessories and things like that. But also I think that if there were somehow to open up iMessage and not even bring it to other devices, just start accepting a different protocol other than SMS, right? They would really start to see a lot of people looking over the fence, to be honest. So that's my opinion. Overall, I think the iPhone is definitely not hype. It's a great device, just not for me. But if you guys want to share your own experience with the iPhone, definitely leave a comment or question down below. I'll make sure to get back to you. And once again, this is Eric Kelly, aka the Tech Gentleman. Until next time, I'll talk to you. Peace.